Hello and welcome to this week's web edition of Cuse Countdown alongside our analysts Jake Marsh and Nicole Weaving. I'm your host Jackson Ajello. Now guys, Syracuse's 9-point loss to LSU last week was actually Syracuse's closest road defeat since way back in 2012. Jake, what can they build on from that performance?
Well, I like it if I'm Dino Babers. I know he came out last week saying they wanted to win the game in Baton Rouge. That is very hard to do. Losing by single digits, that's very impressive. LSU, one of the toughest places to play in the country.
I think a big takeaway is that we saw a different sense of maturity from Eric Dungey. Yes, he made some mistakes, that huge interception on the first play of the game, but we were able to see him use his legs in a more wise way, able to turn what could have been a bigger loss into just a small gain.
Well, actually, Coach Babers said he wasn't quite content with just keeping it close against LSU.
Obviously, it was a well-played game. Playing a team like that in a venue like this is extremely difficult. I'm very proud of my young men, but by no means are we satisfied with coming in here and getting a close loss. We felt like there was enough plays out there for us to make, that if we made the plays, we'd have an opportunity to win. We're disappointed that we didn't. You shouldn't be satisfied. We could have won that football game. We didn't. And they need to understand that that hurts, and we need to find a way to go out and win the next one.
Well, let's take a look at how Syracuse stacks up with this weekend's opponent, NC State. As you can see, the stats are pretty even across the board, but NC State has a slight lead in the turnover margin. Part of the reason for that, Wolfpack quarterback Ryan Finley, the junior, is yet to throw an interception on the season. On the other hand, SU quarterback Eric Dungey has 3. Jake, how important is the turnover battle going to be for these two teams?
Jackson, you can't understate it. When you're going on the road against a team that's virtually ranked, you have to win the turnover battle. And once you're going up against someone like Ryan Finley, that makes that task even harder. So SU has to break through on the graduate student to have a chance this weekend.
Yeah, we really saw Syracuse make some dumb mistakes here and have some missed opportunities against LSU last weekend, and they can't have that against NC State.
And Ryan Finley, clearly an important player for this NC State squad. The man quarterbacking NC State threw for 340 yards last year in a win at the Carrier Dome. Jake, what can the Wolfpack do, or what can Syracuse do, rather, to stop the Wolfpack Junior?
Well, it's really tough because Finley is a very smart player, Jackson, the graduate student, like I said. His confidence sky high right now, beating Florida State on the road, and now Syracuse has a really tough task. He's very patient with the football as well, Jackson. Won't force plays if they aren't there. So it's going to be very tough to break the glass on Ryan Finley, but if Syracuse is able to do that, things are looking good for the Orange.
Well, Finley is not much of a versatile quarterback in terms of doesn't have many running stats this season, only 1 touchdown. So he's really only going to be looking for the passing game. But the reality is that you need to shut down his weapons. He has 4 main wide receivers that he likes to look to. Jacoby Myers, Harmon, Jalen Samuels, a big one that played a huge role against FSU. So those are the things that you're really going to have to look forward to, shutting down those wide receivers.
Clearly going to be a challenge to shut down Finley. But Jake, what's the key to the game overall?
For me, it's exposing the front 7 of NC State. Nicole Bradley Chubb, one of the best defensive ends in the country, the captain for NC State. 7 tackles in Tallahassee last week. If Syracuse can expose them, some runs up the gut, screen passes, just getting the front 7 on its toes throughout the contest, SU has a legit shot this weekend.
I think that the offense definitely does need to get it going, but for me, it's going to be all about stepping up in the secondary. Syracuse has struggled ever since the Antoine Cordy injury in week 1, and now this is a team that heavily relies on their passing offense. As we mentioned, Finley, so good there in the pocket. So the secondary is going to really need to step up and avoid having those long touchdowns. We saw 2 in LSU, 1 in the state to lost to Middle Tennessee. So now they're really going to have to step up in that secondary.
Well, we learned about NC State. We got the keys to the game, but when it's all said and done, Nicole, who's pulling this one out in Raleigh?
I have NC State winning this one 33-27. I think it's going to be a much closer game, as we saw in the head-to-head full screen. Those stats are a lot closer between these two teams, but Syracuse has really had those missed opportunities, some dumb turnovers in these games, and so it's going to be really important for them to not give up these chances to NC State's very phenomenal defense.
Yeah, Nicole, I'm on board with you with the tight game, but give me 30-26 NC State. I think another road game is too tough for the Orange. You have the confidence from last week at LSU, but something we saw down in Baton Rouge, too many mistakes, like you said. You can't have the bad unsportsmanlike penalties, the drop touchdown passes, and Syracuse is going to have to play near picture-perfect football to pull off the upset on Saturday.
Well, both our analysts have Syracuse falling in another nail-biter on the road. That'll do it for this week's web edition of Cuse Countdown. Be sure to check us out on Twitter at CitrusTV Sports for everything on the Hill. For Jake Marsh and Nicole Weaving, I'm Jackson Ajello. Now let's kick off the game.